Live from parts unknown, you're listening to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, the only wrestling podcast on the planet, we think. Sit back, relax, prepare for positivity to run through your veins as Simon Miller gives you your weekly dose of powerful pro wrestling audio. It is Miller Time.
Hello, welcome to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Simon Miller, and yes, this is a pro wrestling podcast. And as you would have noticed this week, we are smashing out the content, and that is because there is so much to talk about, and I don't want to stand on ceremony. And the really cool thing about today's episode is, if you don't know, we always get a Patreon on. You can join it at patreon.com/Simon316. All the information is there to chat wrestling. And we've had this person on before. He has... and I mean this in a positive way, not in a negative way at all, but compared to other people, he has an incredible knowledge of wrestling because he does have incredible old school knowledge too. But my man Stan is back on the podcast. Stan, how you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, sir. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Nice way of saying, yes, I am an old fart.
No, I've been
watching this probably longer than most of your patrons have been alive.
But that's why it's great, man. That's why it's great. I'm not kidding you. I'm not blowing smoke up your ass like they say. The last time you were on, I had loads of people get in touch with me like, man, that guy knows his stuff. And I was like, yes, he does. It was great, man. It was just like a fountain of knowledge. I could have listened to you all day, genuinely.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
No, it's true.
It's been my my lifelong, I call it the soap opera. It used to be just for guys, but yeah, it's been something I've used to be a guilty pleasure, but now it's very mainstream. So yes, I've enjoyed it for a very long time.
Absolutely. Well, dude, let's start right there. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It used to be a boys' club. I mean, yep. The phrase used to be, the boys. That's what they used to say when referring to the group of wrestlers in the back. I mean, they can't really say that anymore, especially if we start talking about the WWE, because we are recording this on a Tuesday evening, so we are mere 24 hours removed from Raw. And yeah, I mean, there's no two ways about it. The women are on top. The women are the thing people are talking about. The women are really annoying people on social media who did not want to see Charlotte Flair get into that match. Now, we can get into that in a second. But obviously, you've seen it all. You've seen promotions focus on, different genders and different races, and all the stuff with WWE back in the sort of the 90s with the political stuff which they do to time. What are you making all of this, man? Because I mean, certainly for WWE, I mean, I've watched it for a while as well. It does feel very different, and I think it feels really exciting. Like, I know it's not really translating to ratings or anything like that, but as I've said 1,000 times before, I'm a fan. I don't have to worry about ratings. It makes no difference to me. That's just a stat that we can discuss. But yeah, how are you finding it?
Yeah, I tell you, to be fair and to be honest, back in the day, frankly, the quality of the women's matches, it was grabbing someone by the hair, throwing them across the ring. I mean, the skill level wasn't necessarily there. Not to say that the men were doing what they can do now. Plus, there was definitely not as much of a, for lack of a better word, there just weren't as many women doing it, to the point where it was a novelty thing where they would show up once every other month. And because of that, there was no one you could really get invested in all that much. Like the Cyndi Lauper and Wendy Richter time, like that was the most invested people could really get in something because there was actual story there. But prior to that, they were on there so infrequent. It'd be like today trying to say, I'm invested in the Ascension storyline. It's just, they're not there. So how can you get invested in someone you don't see but every quarter?
Yeah.
Whereas now, you look at the skills and everything. It's like I mentioned before we got started. I mean, I look at Charlotte Flair and, to quote a Triple H line once said, I think she can have a great match with a mop. Honestly, she is just, and this is coming from a guy who's all in on Becky Lynch. I mean, since her NXT match with Sasha Banks, which was that title match, I've been a big fan of hers. So I think, plus them having the story and having a little bit more charisma and an opportunity to perform in front of people because in the olden days they never got the opportunity. So it's not like they could even practice that much to perform on bigger and larger stages. So I think it's great to have, and I mean, no groundbreaking thing here, but Becky is killing it. I mean that, and just you see their personalities coming out more, and that's I think that's where people are nowadays. It's like, okay, yeah, they have good personalities, they can tell stories, and they're darn good in the ring. So I think it's fantastic. It's not just some eye candy on the periphery, every couple of things, or as a manager role.
Nah, dude, I think you hit the nail on the head, and again, that's something that I would imagine sort of, and again, not in a disparaging way, but a lot of people that listen to this podcast don't know, but that's not their fault. You can only go with what you know, and it's gone from the era you've just mentioned to, and we're focusing on WWE, of course. Japan's always, I think, managed to sort of deal with women a bit better, or at least had higher level of talent than women. But then WWE obviously went through the, what do you even call it? I guess the sexualized era. I don't know. I mean, the way they did in the Attitude Era. And obviously now we get here where they are just treated like they're wrestlers, as they should have done. And so far, so good. I mean, really, like this whole story we've got going on now, for my money, it's not only great because it's the best thing on the show, but it's the best thing they've done in a while, because I love anything that stirs people up. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think that's what wrestling should do. I think it should evoke emotion. And, when I did my ups and downs today. I gave Charlotte being in this spot an up because I thought it was riveting and I thought it was interesting. And I enjoyed the drama of it. And when I get people going crazy on my Twitter, calling me all names under the sun, I think WWE's onto something here. I really, really do. And, so you go, man. Yeah,
no, I was just going to say, I believe it was on your up and down. You even, and I apologize because I do listen to a couple where someone said it sucked the air out of the arena when Becky was suspended and added. I'm like, then they did their job.
It's totally, man.
Because there's, and again, as I mentioned, I was thinking about this all day. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago after the Rumble, that stare down between Becky and Ronda, I'm like, we don't need anything else. Like that, there was just electricity with that. And then as I thought about it today, I'm thinking, okay, they've got to tell a story for some time. So what better way to extend it than what we did last night? And you are, by injecting Charlotte, you are injecting a true heel into this story. Ronda's not the heel. As much as people are booing her, it's not necessarily, in my opinion, fair. Because she's the same person she's been since she's debuted. So she's not really the heel, whereas Charlotte is the definitive, we want to see her get her butt whooped. And frankly, as much as people are coming at you, if this is going to be the last match on the card, as it seems it is, Charlotte deserves to be there. There's no two ways about it. She has been on the main roster as long as Becky and has literally been carrying anyone and everyone she gets in the ring with to matches that some of them had no right to being as good as they were because of her. So I would have said 2 weeks ago no, but now I'm like, I get it.
Yeah, dude, I really am with you. It's I get it, and I understand why people are getting upset, and I will absolutely change my mind if we get to WrestleMania and Becky Lynch doesn't win. But I don't believe that's going to happen. I know it's always a bit worrying to say that with WWE, because in the past they do these things and you're like, what are you doing? But yeah. I don't think they're going to do that in this case. I think that it's going to... I just don't. It's just my gut tells me I don't say they're going to do what's right. That sounds terrible, but I think they understand what they intend to do. And to me, everything you just said is the reason why. Ronda Rousey has fallen into that almost the Roman Reigns role, where people don't actually, I know it changed, but to start with, people don't actually hate Ronda Rousey. They just really like the person that she's going up against.
Exactly. It's like any sports event. It's not that I necessarily like this team. It's just I hate or love that person so much that I now automatically hate who they're going against.
Exactly. It happens all over the world. And, in many ways, it's kind of fun that we do that because, it just is. That's just the world that we live in. But I think you're right. Well, there's two things that you need, and one is sort of in storyline, and for me, one is outside of storyline. In storyline, you do need a proper heel, like you said, and I think Charlotte Flair right now is doing that wonderfully. Her facial expressions make her look like such an asshole in the best possible way. Yeah. But outside of that, too, when we are talking about the legacy of what this means and where, how we look back on it, Ronda Rousey is Ronda Rousey. She's a household name regardless, and she will leave WWE, and I'm sure she'll leave an incredible legacy, even if it is just for that year. However, I like the idea of being able to look back at it and say, not only did Becky Lynch get in that main event, but Charlotte Flair did as well. And I understand people can start saying, well, that's not what the story should be, but I kind of feel like we're stumbling a little bit into hypocritical territory there, because how many times do you have people chanting you deserve it? And there's nothing wrong with that, and I think Charlotte does deserve it, and I think these two women that have been, they are WWE centric wrestlers. I think making sure that you have that for years to come just makes a lot of sense. I just think it does, and I also think this is just the beginning for both of them. Charlotte will go on to better things, Becky will go on to better things, and cementing them within that feud and at the WrestleMania main, it just makes all the sense in the world to me, especially because now you do have, as you said, this singular, really obnoxious heel to focus all of our attention on. I think it's really smart, and I think the match will be better to boot too.
And to be honest, part of my I guess apprehension is I was also thinking of the card as a whole, because my thought was, okay, you're putting Charlotte in there, and now especially with Ember Moon out, I'm like, Asuka's floating in the ether. So because when you had mentioned Ember Moon as winning the Rumble, I'm like, oh, how I would love an Ember Moon Asuka match.
Absolutely, man.
After what they did in NXT, and I'm just like, oh, that would be spectacular. So I get all that, and then if Ronda does leave, now you're talking, okay, mental booking here. Becky makes Ronda, she pins her or taps her. Now Charlotte has to continue their feud. Well, you didn't beat me, you beat her, and now they could continue potentially the Becky Charlotte thing moving forward with that thought process.
Yeah, no, I do. I am with you 100%, and I understand that people are. I get it. I understand the vitriol, but sometimes I think it's good to take a step back and remember this is what we want. Sometimes we watch wrestling and say, oh, there's nothing to react to, nothing, is making me emotional, nothing's making me upset. And now I get it. You can say, oh, I wanted a one-on-one match, but that's why it's good. That's why it works, because this awful, horrible person and the evil boss has come in and they've taken that away from you. So now you want Becky Lynch to win twice as much. To me, that is great storytelling. I'm a big sucker for anything that kind of rolls out of the television shows and does spill into the wrestling community where everybody's up in arms about it, because I think it makes wrestling fun to talk about.
Well, like I said earlier, it knows it's working if people are talking about it. Plus, there's if you always give everyone precisely what they want, what's the incentive to tune in?
Exactly.
It's okay. Becky would be champion on both brands. I mean, and she would never lose. It's like, okay, well, what's the fun in that? You need to give people a reason to tune in. So the giving fans what they want. It's like, okay, it's not going to be every moment, but at the end, the final chapter of the story is where we should hope to see it. And this is going to be Becky standing tall at WrestleMania.
Yes. And that's all that matters.
That is, yes.
Yeah, I think, if they don't do that, we'll readdress it. We will. But my God.
And it's not like that they've not done triple threats before. You think about Daniel Bryan, that was a triple threat. That didn't suffer. Going back to Chris Benoit and Shawn Michaels and Triple H, that was fantastic triple threat match. And put, so it's not like a triple threat means it's going to suffer or diminish putting somebody over as the guy, or in this case, the man. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And again, we will readdress it. I promise we will come back to it if they don't put the title on Becky Lynch and they did all this. Oh, that's terrible. That's bad.
You'll hear my scream from across the pond. I can assure you.
And I'd be with you. Then, again, retroactively, I'd say you screwed it up because you didn't give. I don't mind all the obstacles in the world being put in front of Becky Lynch, and I don't mind triple threat matches. I think that's the other thing. All of a sudden, people have come out and said they don't enjoy triple threat. I've never had a problem with a triple threat match. I understand the benefit and the what's the word I'm looking for? But I understand the one-on-one match, it feels more important. But let's not stand, let's go with what makes sense. And I think having all three in the match means it will be a better match. And I want the best match of WrestleMania to be the last thing that I see. So let's load that up as much as we have to do. Let's tell a good story. And like you kind of hinted at earlier, we've still got 2 months till WrestleMania. We've got a lot of time to kill.
We can't just give, like you said, give her, okay, great, you're in the match. Okay, now what are you going to tell a story to keep this interested in going for the next 2 months? You got to throw those obstacles and little wrinkles to keep you coming back in. So yeah, so like I said, my initial reaction was, ugh, but then cooler head prevailed. I thought about it, ran it over my head. I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. I'm good with it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, dude. And how do you like you mentioned, I mean, it's fascinating the stuff that you talked about a minute ago, how, the women back in the day were almost like, just unexpected and a rarity. When, back then, did you ever was there ever even a hint that we'd get to the stage where, I mean, one, let's face it, it's taken far too long to get here anyway, given that, we're talking sort of a good couple of decades, if not, more actually there was a couple of decades ago. But yeah. Did you ever think that we would get to get to this stage? I mean, it's just because I just think it's fascinating because, if you started watching wrestling in the last 5 years, you've kind of got on at a good point when it comes to, diversity and gender equality as best as WWE can. I know that sounds a bit ridiculous, but, they still do fall back into their ways, as we saw over the last couple of months with Mandy Rose and Alexa Bliss. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, when you are watching back then, because I remember when I started watching, obviously, kind of in the late 80s, as you said, I mean, I was a WWE guy through and through, and in the UK, we didn't have that much exposure. If someone said to me, what's women's wrestling? I would have gone, I don't know, Miss Elizabeth? Like, Sensational Sherry. That's it. That's all I had. And obviously, Alundra Blaze came along eventually, but yeah, I mean, how sort of how different's the wrong word, but how surprised are you that maybe it took this long and now that it is so different?
Well, as I mentioned, you did, even back when I was watching, you did see some flashes of it, because occasionally there would be some, as you mentioned, some Japanese, like the Jumping Bomb Angels. You would occasionally see them, so you knew there was, okay, there is some possibility of this happening, and it obviously was not an overnight thing. Would I have said back then that I would see today someone like Charlotte Flair, like Asuka, like Becky? No. I mean, there was, just based on what we had. But even think of, in that aspect, would I have said I'd see a Daniel Bryan or an AJ Styles at the top of the card?
So true.
No, because it's, even when you see, like, I've met Charles White, the Godfather, and he's a monstrous man. But compared to where some of those other guys were, he was kind of average size, and maybe a little bigger. So to see and because it's been a gradual progression, and especially, like you mentioned with the Attitude Era, when let's be frank, they were just hiring models who weren't afraid to necessarily take a bump. I'm using air quotes. But, I mean, where they were, but even then there were occasional flashes, like you had Ivory and Victoria, and then Lita comes on. And even, if you even talk about looking at progression, if you look at Trish Stratus when she first came in, she was awful. I mean, she was literally eye candy, but she busted her hump and really improved how well she worked. So, it definitely was a longer progression, but part of it from the WWE's aspect was, and of course Vince McMahon, they had to give them a chance to go for more than 45 seconds, run out there, let's do a finisher and it's over, or you have a multi-person match and a snapmare's knocking somebody out of the match. It's where they're just, okay, here's the women, go ahead, do your thing, and let's move on. We got a commercial break, or people need to go to the bathroom. Yeah. So would I have seen this back then? No. But it doesn't mean I'm not loving every minute of it. Every time I watch Sasha Banks, I just start with "Please don't die."
It's yeah.
Because I seriously worry about her sometimes because she just, no fear out of that girl whatsoever, and she's so young, and it's like you could have a really long career. Please just don't die. Just don't die with some of the stuff they're doing. But again, like I said, I couldn't have seen this just based on where it was at the time. No.
Well, no, I think it's such a good point about the sort of the big guy business as well, and he's so true. Like, I think we kind of, even someone like Hulk Hogan, who I believe, I always get confused with wrestlers' heights because WWE's lied about them for so long. I get confused, but I know he was billed at 6'7", so I'm presuming he was at least 6'4", 6'5". You know, I guess he's, and even that's a tall guy. You know, in people's minds, people assume that Hulk Hogan, I don't know what they think about him, but I remember when he squared up to the Ultimate Warrior, who was obviously shorter than Hulk Hogan, you kind of had that disparity there. And it does go to show how crazy the wrestling industry is at the moment, where, like you say, AJ Styles in that era would have looked like, I can't even think of a word, but like a mole. Like he would have looked absolutely tiny.
Yeah, you go back to the Hardy Boys when they first came in, or the 1, 2, 3 Kid. I mean, that's the. I just even was looking up, like Paul Orndorff was only 6 foot, but he was 250 pounds. He'd be a monster in today's day. Like he would be a huge man comparatively. You know, I mean, so it was all the big guys, and little guys had to be mostly in tag teams, or they would be, to be honest, they'd be the jobbers to go out there and get flung around the ring by Hogan and Orndorff and all the others.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing as well, you just mentioned the Hardys as well. I remember when I met Matt Hardy, and I'm kind of the same. I'm like 6'1", and maybe a little bit, and he was pretty much the same height as me. And I remember I took a picture with him, as you do, and loads of people commented, going, "What? Like, Miller, are you like 5'9"?" I was like, "No, Matt Hardy's tall. Like, he's not a shrimp, but you just assume he is because he was around the 6'6", 6'7" guys, which is what WWE is made up of."
When you're working against the acolytes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're gonna look, or you're going against even the Dudleys or Edge and Christian. You're gonna look like you're shorter. So, but it's that perception. But yeah, it's not an unpleasant thing because the smaller guys, except generally, will have ideally longer careers because of the knees and just the wear and tear in their body. But yeah, obviously, I'm very happy where it has come with the women and everyone.
And the other thing we've got to talk about as well, given the world we're now entering back into, because as much as things change, the more they stay the same, as they say. Because obviously AEW has become the most ridiculous success ever. I mean, it's official now. They've sold out Double or Nothing. I mean, I think they're releasing like 300 tickets tomorrow as we record this, that's sold out. Even if they didn't sell those 300 tickets, they're allowed to say they've sold out. It's not a lie. And, the cool thing about AEW mixed with Ring of Honor and New Japan and WWE, and, not many people are mentioning MLW as well, but they're not massive, but they're cool. And Impact has its struggles, but they're still there. We are kind of falling back incredibly as well when WWE's trying to expand and create their own territory system, which is the way that they describe it. It's actually going the opposite way. And sure, we have NXT UK, and eventually they're going to have NXT Japan. But I really do think with the establishment of AEW, and let's face it, again, I'm just going on the rumors and the murmurings, could have sold technically more tickets than WWE sold for the Royal Rumble, which is absolute. Again,
that's mental.
Yeah, I mean that could be hearsay, and who knows? But there's a lot of people out there saying there was enough interest that they could have, gone well over the 30,000 mark, and the Royal Rumble did 32. And let's not forget, it did 32,000 with around about 6 months on sale. Where do you see that going? Because in my head, this feels more when you look at it, a territory system and people warring with each other. I understand that it's global now, but social media makes that so much easier. But to me, this is even more like that period than it ever has been, well, at least for a long, long time, probably in my lifetime, because when I started growing up with WWE, Vince McMahon had already started making those moves, and obviously the last people he killed off was WCW.
Yep. And it's funny you mentioned WCW, because some of the things that are coming out, I'm trying to be positive because I feel it'll be nice to have a good competitor, or at least competitor is the wrong word, an alternative in the States, because part of my issue necessarily was, say, like New Japan or some of the other ones. I just don't see them. I have no investment in the characters.
Yeah.
So I don't know who they are. So it's kind of hard for me to say watch in and see some of their big shows and really feel invested. The only I say concern, it just come in my head from WCW is offering, from what's been said, I have no one, some guaranteed contracts, allowing them more of their own creative control. And when I hear some of those things, it just makes me think, well, those were kind of some of the downfalls of WCW. Now I understand this is a different time, and with some of the wrestlers being involved in the ownership of the company. But and they seem like smart guys, but Eric Bischoff was not a dumb person by any stretch of the imagination. But I guess I'm optimistic, but cautiously, because when it comes to working with people, for example, say in the WWE, or working, and this is true of anything in life, where you're working alongside someone in a company versus, okay, now you're technically coming to work for me. That's a whole different, because Cody and the Bucks and holy crow, old man moment, I just blanked on his name. Oh my God.
Who we talking? Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega.
And thank you, Kenny Omega. I holy crow, I just blanked.
That happens, man. It happens.
The fact of, they have to not only be concerned with their own matches, but the overall product. And if it's going to be on TV, you've got TV people to work with and sell this on. So I understand it's good for people to have an alternative, because frankly, the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars was a fantastic time because you had alternatives. I remember many times I would have two TVs. I'd have one on Nitro and one on Raw, and I'm just watching between the two of them. So it'll be good to have that, though. I hope that they have a little bit of cautionary tale from some of the past, and to navigate some of those early waters, because especially when you're talking about non-wrestling people who are going to be involved in some of the decisions, and especially how the people are paid, and then the TV, that's where we have seen in the past that things can get very murky.
I think the TV is going to be really interesting, because I don't even think I was thinking about this the other day. Obviously, I mean, they've got Being the Elite on YouTube. And I'm not saying they should bring that to a weekly TV show, but it really does feel like, given what the world is in 2019 and what people expect, do we really need like another Raw, for example? I just don't think.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the ratings. Ratings nowadays, frankly, are almost irrelevant, because people can absorb the content. You can watch Raw and SmackDown the next day on Hulu. You can pick up on WWE's YouTube channel. There's so many other ways to consume this. Like you were mentioning with the TV deal with Being the Elite, why not make their okay, I don't get a TV deal, fine. You've got how many million subscribers on YouTube? Make it a weekly YouTube series. They probably get into more people's homes than they would on any local TV station.
Yeah.
By doing it that way, and if need be, handle it that way. So, I mean, everyone thinks, TV's got to be the way, but I was watching another one where Adam Wilborn mentioned a recent episode of Impact had 12,000 people watching on TV. Yeah. I'm like, so it's like 12,000. It's just that. So tell me how this TV deal is helping them.
I don't know how they're still alive. I really don't know how they're still going. It's amazing.
So you're right. I mean, I don't think that necessarily the TV deal is the end all be all. because of, as I mentioned, some of those outside forces of a network having to answer to them and doing all that stuff. Whereas if it's on YouTube, well, clearly the Being the Elite series on YouTube has been fine and hasn't been kicked off of YouTube, and I'm sure it's very successful. That would immediately be in more homes, I would imagine, than most TV deals that they could hook up with.
And I think it gives them, again, I understand that there's money in rights fees and stuff, but I just find there's much more interest in a monthly live show, or however they want to do it, where your TV hasn't just been match, backstage segment, promo. You know, we've seen that, and because it doesn't exist right now, let's say it is going to be Tuesday Night Titans or whatever the hell was trademarked. You know, if you want
Tuesday Night Dynamite.
That's the one, Tuesday Night Dynamite. Yeah. Like if that's what they're going to call it, okay, you know, it's fine. But why? I just think when you have a blank slate and when you've proven how incredibly smart you can be with social media, surely there's elements of that you can bring across to your television so that if you are going to start running monthly events like Double or Nothing, you can keep that interest high, because that's where it all changes. You know, if we do have one in, what are we in now? So it's May is the first one. We have it in June, July, August, September, October, November. And I understand you have to use TV. Well, I mean, correct myself. I would have said you have to use TV to promote your pay-per-views, but do you? Because they don't seem to need television at all. And
yeah, exactly.
I get the bubble will burst. Of course the bubble will burst. However, to me, the real excitement in all of this is not only the way they're going about things, not only the roster, not only the new wrestlers that I'm learning just because they're associated with the company, but it's that they can do things in a completely different way, which is really what a number of wrestling fans have been asking for. And they have that opportunity, and they've already got the investment. Because I don't think... I get people want to be doom and gloom, but I find it very hard to criticize them at the moment when everything they've done has been an absolute success, and Double Nothing is just proof. Is just proof of that. That's why I find it exciting. It's completely up to them what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I say unfortunately, I think the TV aspect could be some of the decisions of something outside of their control with the owner of the Jaguars, where he might, necessarily not feel that just a YouTube or, a non-TV show is quote unquote enough. And I don't know. I'm just pure speculation. But like you said, I mean, clearly everything they've been doing, like you mentioned, there's definitely some names I'm not sure of. But it's enough to give me interest that if they do put out a weekly, bi-weekly, whatever type of show, I will tune in, because as I mentioned, it's nice to have, options. You know what you're getting for the most part with WWE, so it would be very intriguing to see what sort of route that they go and how they handle everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm excited. That's all I ever need. I like what they're doing on Raw. I like everything with AEW. I like it. It gets me excited. And I liked everything, that happened with New Japan earlier in the week as well. So since we last talked, a lot has changed in WWE. I mean, I think I can't remember exactly. Had Roman Reigns, was he still around when Roman Reigns was still around? Yeah, that's what I thought. So, what is your take on kind of, the industry and where they're going? Obviously, SmackDown moving over to Fox and the build up to WrestleMania again. The ratings did come out a few minutes ago. Yeah, they're not great. They're 2.6 million, which is down from 3.1 million a year ago. That isn't good. So, there's a reason to raise an eyebrow. But again, man, it's always good coming from you, because you've got a lot of people at the moment. I say you're allowed to do whatever you want, but a lot of people react very quickly without kind of sitting down and thinking about it. And obviously, you have that built-in knowledge. You've seen this happen before with loads of companies.
Yeah, the knee-jerk reaction. That's not just wrestling. We know that's the world.
Totally true. Yes,
everyone's a headline thing, and they one thing I've learned from my work is to, if you're going to write an email, take a minute, step back, then look and see what you've written. Take a moment to think about things. And that's the true of this. To me, I'll be honest, Raw is a slog sometimes. It just, I don't know what it is, why the extra hour, but it just feels like, now, of course, going back even 3 or 4 weeks ago, that slog included almost 50-60% Baron Corbin every other minute, and his wonderful, that whole thing, which to me, we won't talk about that, but he just was not a compelling figure. That just went on for too long. I said it before. I think probably I understand, I guess, from a business aspect, but Brock as the champion is not good. Give Ronda credit. She's out there, she's doing it, but how am I? And I know this has been one of those things that's been said a million times, but how am I supposed to care about the Raw Universal Championship when the champion doesn't? And it's made completely obvious by the fact, they always, he was champion for 600 days. Yeah, and he wrestled 4 matches. I mean, so how does that, you look at AJ, it's like he wrestled in a week as much as Brock wrestled last year. So tell me how these are, if you don't show up, I mean, that's the old Hogan era stuff. You're only defending the title once a quarter because there's only 4 pay-per-views. Well, yeah, you're going to have long reigns. Obviously Roman, and as much as I not necessarily a fan of Roman the character, I know this has been mentioned recently he completely underrated as a worker. I think that he can take and sell a beating like very few can. Like, you can really think that he's about to die because he just gets flung around and just beat on, and then he, of course, then he makes his comeback. But they're trying with Seth. The Seth Dean feud fell flat. I think I'm in the minority. Dean does not interest me at all.
No, I think a lot of people are like that. I think either people really like him or they don't get him at all. It's very black and white.
It's not even necessarily like some of his character stuff's funny. It's just like, I think and I haven't seen him do it in a while, but the Looney Lariat to me was one of the dumbest moves I've ever seen ever.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm like, how is falling back and doing that making this more effective?
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
It ranks up there with Natalia's, discus clothesline. It looks like it's a video game because it takes so long to set up and hit. I'm like, oh, wrestling logic. Okay. But I think from the aspect of the men's strangely, except for Daniel Bryan, the men's singles competition is where they're failing. The U.S. and IC titles are beyond irrelevant at this point. The Raw Universal Championship is equally irrelevant. They're all defended as they're all irrelevant. Literally, the only men's single and the men's tag team. If you think about it, really, they're not focusing. And the tag team bewilders me. Because for years, some of the most fantastic matches were, you look at the Hardys, Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, you go back to the Hart Foundation, the Rockers. There's so much storytelling that can be told from, even look at NXT UK or NXT. I mean, you give me a match with the Undisputed Era and Mustache Mountain, I'm good. I'll watch that every week. Because they're gonna tear it up, but to me, I understand they're trying to push the women, but it feels like they're just okay. Let's just go. Here's a 6-man tag with Kurt Angle, who honestly, every time he does something, I expect him to like break apart into pieces. He's another one. Just please don't die. It's just I see the old Kurt Angle when he was that machine, and I look at him now and I'm like, dude, it's okay. No, just really, you worry me. Braun Strowman has completely lost his mystique, and they should have pulled the switch on him a while ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've just the whole crown jewel ridiculousness. That it's just It felt like when WCW killed Goldberg. It's okay. Now you've just ruined this character.
I honestly agree. So I agree with that so much.
And it's just so it's to the point where they've now conditioned us to be like, oh, Braun Strowman, monster among men, and he's going to run through everybody, but they don't give him the big one. I mean, and we talk about the tag team division. You can go back to last WrestleMania where Braun Strowman and this is something you and I was furious with Nicholas. Because my thought is, I'm like, you have an army of wrestlers in the back who are sitting in the back and could easily step in and do that. But this is what you think of tag team wrestling. That Braun Strowman and a child are viable tag team champions on the biggest show of them all. And you expect us to then, after that, moving forward, take the tag division seriously. Even look at SmackDown. I'm sorry. They're an entertaining combo, but give me back the bar. I mean, that Shane and the Miz, I know it's leading towards we all think towards the WrestleMania, but to me, there's really very few compelling male, really, if not for the Becky, Charlotte, Ronda, and Daniel Bryan, what other compelling storyline can you say is going on this moment in WWE?
I mean, I can't. I mean, it's a truth. It's true, though, right? I mean, there's nothing that stands out a mile. I mean, you've got Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar, but you've already touched upon why that is disjointed, and that's because it is. In terms of the tag team divisions, I mean, my hope for the tag team division, and it's been an afterthought for so long. You do have to wait and see. But I like the Revival versus Gable and Rude on Raw. I like that they gave it time. I like the fact that they gave it enough time. In fact, that they managed to win the crowd over. But, we've seen them do that before. Like John Cena had that great US Championship run, and that didn't do enough to cement the belt back up where it was. And various people have, when Seth Rollins became Intercontinental Champion, he was going to restore the worth to that belt, and he didn't do it. So, it's a long process to turn a title into something that means something, as New Japan and other companies have shown, and WWE back in the day. So, we need to ensure that we don't just throw it all off a side of a cliff just because it doesn't result in incredible ratings or the right kind of reaction in the arena. So I'm hopeful that we do, because I think the best thing about Raw was proving that this weird, bizarre Chad Gable and Bobby Roode tag team have proven that they can go. Chad Gable especially is fantastic, and the Revival are easily one of the best tag teams there is. And I think if you have that kind of roster under the roof, but like you say, we've got to build up the teams, we've got to build up the stories, because as we've seen that for the last 50 years, that is what people buy into when it comes to pro wrestling. And
it was actually funny as we were just talking, I legitimately forgot who the IC champ was.
Oh, dude, but why would you know? Why would you know?
And because your IC champ is in a no, you've got Bobby Lashley, this freak of nature. Let's be honest. He's put him out there, and again, they've kind of done this US Open Challenge or whatever. Throw out a person of the week for Lashley to crush. Yeah. Make the title feel like something. Even I mean, my kind of hope for the tag team division, as strange as it is, I'm kind of hoping that the Major Brothers. I honestly would like Kurt Hawkins' first win to be them winning the championship.
Why not, man?
You know what I mean? It's that sort of a thing where it's, they lose and lose. So, but they weren't on last night again. And there's a good story with those two where people want to see Kurt Hawkins get a win. And as much as the woo, woo, woo and all that, people still like Zack Ryder. They do. But if you're only going to see them every 5 or 6 weeks, well, how am I supposed to buy into this? And you got a 3-hour show. You're telling me you can't squeeze them in somewhere? It's maybe cut down the 20-minute opening promo. How about that? Which seems to be coming back again. As much as I love seeing Becky, they just tend to drag on way too much.
Yeah, it takes time. I totally agree with the Bobby Lashley thing. Like, The fact that Bobby Lashley, Lio Rush versus Finn Balor was announced on social media and then casually just thrown out there on Raw, it was thrown out there in that backstage segment with Finn Balor. I was a bit like, you have to make it a big deal on television first. You just do, because that's what we're used to. That's the nature of the beast. And WWE aren't in a position where they can start playing around with that because they've already established the rules. So I do find it crazy, and it's the same with the US title. I don't know what's going on with the US title on SmackDown. I guess we'll find out more. Later, but I think maybe that's another reason. They are having the best matches, and well, those three are anyway, and having the best storylines. But I think there's another reason why the three women have risen to where they have, because they've just shown what not to do. Don't do this with these belts. Do it like this, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, it works." And they're not doing anything revolutionary. They're just doing simple, interesting stories with characters that people like that happen to go on and have good matches, which I think is all wrestling is. I mean, that's all it is.
And there's also the time, and I'm pretty sure we talked about this before. There's this the tradition of, okay, yeah, they're face to face, but Ronda and Becky have not faced off in the ring in a match. It's, not having them go at it in that aspect just builds desire to see that on a pay-per-view or a special thing. You can have Finn Balor beating up people and Bobby Lashley beating up people, but having them go in multi-man tag team matches or even singles matches every week, you're not building me any desire to see this match on a bigger stage. You're just not. And that's something that they definitely need to, but they won't. I mean, that's, to me, having that separation, it just builds you the anticipation to see when they finally do go at it. That's when you see most of the big pops from the crowd, when two people that have been either jawing or going at it, and then when they finally, throw hands, that's when you see big pops. It's like, finally, they're going to get to do it. We've been waiting so long to see that. Yeah. And they don't give us that anymore as much as they are with Becky and Ronda, and they should see this is working for these two. It can work with other people who are equally as talented.
I know. I think it's because they have so much content to fill. Sometimes they feel like they haven't got a choice, and it's like, well, we just got to get everything done and in, and then you move on to something else, and you're like, well, no, I didn't get a chance to focus on it. Do you think there's anything? Because obviously, wrestling always looks to the past to influence the future, especially when we go through these cycles. And back in December, we had the McMahons come out and say, we're going to change things up. And there's been a few minor changes, but, last night's Raw especially maybe fell back into a groove. Do you think there's anything they could take from maybe, companies that have now long gone or ideas that don't seem to have come back? Do you think there's anything they could tap into there that we haven't seen? Because some of the best feuds that get over in 2019, when you actually break them down, are based on successes that did happen in Mid-South or AWA or wherever. Like, you just have to do a bit of history. Like, they're doing that again. And again, it works because it worked then. And, sometimes the fan base doesn't really change that much. We just accept wrestling for what it is in the current time.
Well, as much as, and I got to be honest, one of the things I'm most excited with AEW, and we talked about it before, is tag teams.
Yeah,
they can tell some of the most phenomenal stories. I mean, look at the NXT UK Tag Team Championship match. I mean, that between British Strong Style and I know Liverpool's number one, but I don't remember the other. But that was just such incredible storytelling, and they're able to go 20 plus minutes. You think about the Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, going back to Road Warriors. Tag team wrestling had a lot of gravitas, and it's proven last night with Rude and Gable, two very good wrestlers, against the Revival, two very good wrestlers. It can bring people to their feet and really, engross people. I think that's something that they really need to look at. I don't understand what the bee in the bonnet is, or the lack of interest, because Vince has made a ton of money on tag teams over the years. To me, that, and as much as I said I'm not a fan of Brock Lesnar not being around, I do think having a world champion that doesn't put his title on the line that often is a good thing. So they're kind of doing that okay with Daniel Bryan, but having the champion as a presence that you can see on the show is big. And that's true of all of them. I mean, SmackDown with the U.S. title, I understand they got a shorter time frame, but do I need to see another episode of Miz and Mac TV? Could I take that out and give me a Rusev versus anybody? I mean, I know he's not the champ; it's R-Truth, but you understand what I'm saying. Obviously there's a lot of stuff from the old days we don't want to talk about that they shouldn't get, but really just we talk about, where they say, well, Vince doesn't like tag team wrestling, and well, it feels like he doesn't really like men's singles wrestling very much either right now, because they're not doing much, and I understand but they're also not giving, you're not getting anyone over. And I understand the 50-50 booking, which is infuriating because it means, if everyone's equal, no one's special. I also think Raw is sorely lacking in compelling characters. Honestly, one of the things I did kind of pop for the most was Kevin Owens.
Oh man, how much do we need him back? As soon as he came on, I was like, bring him back now.
But even they have to. They can't make him look like a doofus. I mean, his title run was wholly forgettable, other than the fact of one of the most clever wrestlers, I've seen him back when he was Kevin Steen and doing the stuff with Scum, which was some of the most disturbing stuff ever. And I know your dad Goldberg, I know you liked him, but like Kevin Owens looking like a complete doofus and losing in 45 seconds, well, you make him look like a doofus, and he's a smarter guy than that. I also tire of someone's music's playing. Oh, I have to stop everything and look what's going on over there. The distraction things are way overplayed. They need to stop that crap. Asuka looking like a complete idiot because she's staring at James Ellsworth in a mask and a robe for a minute. Just all of that, that's very frustrating because you make your talent look like a bunch of idiots. I'm like, fine, someone's music playing, great. Come out, hit me. You'll get this. I'll win because I'm disqualified because you're disqualifying me. That I think they need to get away from more. And honestly, for me, managers are. I used to love managers are easy heat for a heel. Look at Leo Rush. I mean, he is infuriating, but he's getting Lashley heat.
Yeah.
Lana, whatever. I mean, she's proven she's a wrestler who can't take a bump because apparently it breaks her leg when she falls off the ring. But her back when, they first came up, like she was a very compelling character. I don't think having managers, especially for, you make Asuka go out there and talk, or Shinsuke go out there and talk, and yeah, you can understand what they're saying, but it's clear they're struggling, or even sometimes Finn Balor, people who struggle on the mic. Well, Brock Lesnar's awful on the mic, and he hasn't spoken, he speaks 10 words a year, and that doesn't take away from his mystique. I think managers could definitely be something that they could bring back, and it's to have a mouthpiece for people and get that easy, cheap heat by, choking them on the ropes or doing some little thing during the match. And then, once every couple of weeks, well, Leo Rush. I mean, people pop when he gets beat on because he's just so infuriating. This little guy that runs around being an annoyance, then he gets his comeuppance, and it makes everyone happy. So that's my thoughts.
It's interesting there as well, because you mentioned managers and you mentioned tag teams. Two things that apparently, according to the rumors or whatever, Vince McMahon notoriously doesn't like. And yet, when you do go back in the day, you mentioned the Road Warriors. I mean, look, when they came in as Legion of Doom, they were still. I mean, maybe they weren't what they were. When they were in, sort of kicking ass in Chicago, but they were still incredible. Like, the whole fact that when people still get a good reaction today, it's known as a Road Warrior pop. I think kind of sums up that they did quite well. And obviously, we could talk about Bobby Heenan. We could talk about Jimmy Hart and Mean Gene to a lesser extent. I know they came from other companies first, but it seems strange that. Back then, Vince McMahon was happy to sort of draft in these people and allow them to do what they're meant to do. And yet now, they don't even get a look in. Like I say, we're only just on the cusp of hopefully bringing back the tag team division. So I really do find that crazy because it just seems like a smart, easy thing to do, or at least try. Mm-hmm. You're throwing everything at the wall, trying to sort your ratings out and do this and do that. Why aren't you trying that? I don't get it.
I mean, especially with Leo Rush, who... Yeah, because he's so small, it's like, okay, so you can take an active competitor on your roster and put him in that role, get him more TV time. I mean, Leo Rush, if not for being a manager, people would, I mean, yeah, he's on 205 Live, but people would miss out on that. You look at Drew Gulak. He's fantastic on the mic. Get him in sort of an advocate role. Then you're getting your money's worth out of some of these people. And you mentioned the managers. You got Freddie Blassie, Lou Albano, the Grand Wizard. These are all Hall of Fame people who served a great purpose. And you don't it's not like you have to add a segment. It's just you're putting this just an extra piece to add to a match without having to even extend the match in any way, shape, or form. You just put this so you're the typical manager stuff, and it draws the right kind of heat that they want for their villains, and because that also tends to be a problem is it's hard to find a lot of times that, I mean, Baron Corbin, I actually think he's getting the wrong. I think he's more of a, we're annoyed with you, we don't want to see you anymore, not, ooh, you're a bad guy. But you have very few, not as many good true heels. Like Drew McIntyre is supposed to be a heel, but I want to see him win the Universal Championship today. I think he's awesome on the mic. He's an awesome worker. He looks like he would kill anybody in a dark alley, but he seems off, like one of the nicest people. But he just, to me, he looks it, but he doesn't, I mean, yeah, because he's who he's going against, but if he was going against Lesnar or Roman Reigns, he's not going to get that true heel, in my opinion. Because he's so good, and it's a smarter fan now who appreciates people who do good work, whether they're good or bad.
That's the strange thing that, when the Revival won the tag team championships, everybody was over the moon. I was like, wait, they're the heels. It's like, but we don't care because we just felt like they deserved it because we're all invested in what's going on. Yeah, behind the scenes, AEW, wherever else you want to look at it. It really made me chuckle, but I don't care. Like, if that's what heels and faces are in 2019, let's just go with it. I mean, wrestling evolves and there's no point fighting it. I think you may as well like the bits you like and don't like the bits you don't like, but certainly don't let it drag you down too much. But it is fascinating. It's a fascinating world we live in, and I think towards the end of the year, we're going to be having a very different landscape with, again, obviously the TV deals on Fox and all of that, and more Saudi Arabia shows, and we'll have a better idea of what All Elite Wrestling's going to do, and I'll be intrigued to see where New Japan and Ring of Honor are. I mean, they've got this huge Madison Square Garden show, and I think after that, I'm not saying it's going to be tricky at times, but I do think they'll have to start leveling out a little bit and showing their hand, because obviously New Japan's going through a huge reshuffle at the moment. Ring of Honor's signing up guys left, right, and center. Apparently, there was an amazing match on Ring of Honor TV the other day between Bandino and Mark Haskins, so I need to check that out at some point too. But I think it's all very, very exciting, and post WrestleMania is going to be fascinating too to see what the plans are. Hopefully on SmackDown we get a better idea what's going on with Oscar and people like that. So I think the cards are stacked up well, but there are also some glaring issues like we've kind of talked about here that hopefully we will plug up, but who knows? You never know with any kind of wrestling. It's crazy.
I mean, I not that I wouldn't watch, but Becky, Ronda, after Royal Rumble, I'm like, I'm all in. I mean, so yeah, I'm that's if nothing else, and I think having that close will be a great way to keep the fans alive through a 19-hour slog of WrestleMania content. So
Yeah.
knowing that at the end, we've got the Becky thing coming, which they better do, as we've talked about.
I think they will.
Yeah.
And just to end on a tease, literally, as we've been doing this podcast, I had a notification come up on my desktop, and I clicked it, and my word, if it isn't a picture of Chris Jericho standing next to the one and only Dave Bautista. So if you haven't heard those rumors, apparently Dave Bautista is not only chatting with WWE about return, but he's also chatting to All Elite Wrestling, and it could be a really old picture for all I know. But Jericho just put it up, that tease. And we will we'll have to wait and see where it goes. But that would be imagine that if Dave Bautista has his final run in All Elite Wrestling, I'll just collapse on the floor for a while, because that would just be like, my word, what kind of world do we live in now? How did that happen?
Yeah, that'd be interesting for sure.
I mean, I like Batista. I don't necessarily think anything he does now would be headline worthy, but I like him.
Yeah, but that brings, as much as we know Jericho is a name, that brings a true mainstream name, because he's gotten pretty. I mean, I would say after The Rock, as far as former wrestlers, he's probably number 2 as far as success in Hollywood. So that would definitely bring a huge recognizable name to come and see, AEW if he goes there. So yeah, that would be not The Rock, but that's not a horrible second place.
No, I think it's massive. I think it's massive, and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen. Right, as always, Stan, that hour has just how that was an hour, I'll never know. It felt like about 10 minutes, which I think has got to be a good sign.
Yes, I agree. Yes, so, I always enjoy. I enjoy speaking with you as well. It's. I don't get to talk wrestling very much with people, so it's very entertaining. And as you can tell, I have a lot of stuff that jumps in my head. So it's nice to get to talk to someone about it.
It's great, man. Like I say, I love everybody that comes on this show. I really, really do. But you certainly bring something unique to it, and I like that, man. It's this. It's rare for, like I say, we even mentioned the Rock and Roll Express, and they never come up. But it's cool. It's cool to have that, because without those guys, we wouldn't be here now. And I know that's the most cliched wrestling thing ever, but it's true. And I love going back and watch all that stuff. I really, really do. So Stan, we'll have to plan another one soon. I mean, we'll stay in touch and we'll sort that one out. But in the meantime, look, enjoy the build up to Elimination Chamber. This Sunday, can you believe? I couldn't believe it when I
know.
I thought we just had the Rumble. Like, that's what's going on. And then
Naya, don't kill anybody, please.
Oh man, I tell you, I thought she was going somewhere a few weeks ago, and now I'm like, nope, I was wrong.
Nope.
When is Fastlane as well? Fastlane is. This is how we will end this. It's March the 10th. I mean, okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3. It's only 3 weeks, That's 3 weeks. Then obviously you have the big build to Mania. It's bizarre, isn't it? The amount of pay-per-views we have, crazy. Anyway, that's another whole conversation within itself.
Yes, sir.
Stan, thank you so much. We'll get you back on,
pleasure,
and everybody else
you.
out there in the wrestling world, the podcast. Thanks very much for listening. Make sure you check out the other episodes that have gone up this week. We'll also have more towards the end of the week, because that's just how we roll here on Simon is Pro Wrestling Podcast. And again, yes, I am for Charlotte being in that match. I apologize, but Stan is too, so you can hate us both. Either way, I will talk to you all again very soon.